Max Verstappen saw his championship defense take a massive hit after what he believed was hard racing was labelled as dangerous driving at the very least by the FIA, who were all but generous with the Dutchman regarding his moves on Norris in Turn 4 and Turn 8. For both of these actions, the three-time world champion received a 10-second penalty each, meaning that his one and only pit stop lasted more than 40 seconds, as he managed to salvage something out of the race and finish P6. But has the FIA turned their cards against Verstappen after deciding to not penalize him in Austin? And more importantly, was the inconsistency present again? It goes without saying that the hottest topic in the Formula One world in the next couple of days will be the two penalties that Max Verstappen received after he went on to defend against Norris right after he lost the position to Sainz. As the pair entered Turn 4, Norris was ahead of the apex, something that was discussed so many times in Austin and the controversial Turn 12 fight. But the Dutchman thought otherwise, pushing Norris in a defense manner that only he can implement on the grid. Just a couple of corners later, when Norris didn't give up the position for obvious reasons, Max ran both him and the Brit off the track, which made them lose the position in Turn 4 to Leclerc, just like they did in Turn 1 in Austin at the opening lap of the race. In an official statement from the FIA, the governing body has gone on to explain why the penalty was given to Verstappen twice, as they wrote, Norris was ahead of Verstappen at the entry, apex and towards the exit of the turn, where he started being forced off the track. The stewards believe that the manoeuvre was done in a safe and controlled manner and that Norris would have been able to make the manoeuvre on the track had he not been forced off the track by Verstappen. The penalty is the standard one in such cases. Following the incident at Turn 4, Verstappen attempted to pass Norris on the inside at Turn 8. Verstappen was ahead at the apex of Turn 8 and would have been entitled to racing room. However, he was not able to complete the manoeuvre on the track, left the track and kept the lasting advantage, gaining the position, incidentally forcing Norris off the track. The penalty is standard for leaving the track and gaining a lasting advantage. Lando Norris was very angry with the moves of his rival, from whom he managed to take off 10 points in the championship lead as he finished second behind his old teammate Sainz. And when talking about it on the radio, Norris said, "I was ahead the whole way through the corner. This guy Verstappen is dangerous. I just have to avoid a crash. I'll end up in the wall in a minute." Obviously, Verstappen was angry at how he lost the position to Sainz because he had an amazing start to the race and managed to be P1 before the safety car was deployed. The lack of battery power, something he complained about on the radio before being attacked by both Sainz and Norris, has turned out to be too big of a deficit for him to keep the position he gained at the beginning of the race. However, the discrepancy here is quite visible. For overtaking outside of the track, Norris gained a 5-second penalty, but Verstappen received a 10-second one, on top of the 10-second penalty he already received in pushing Norris outside of Turn 4, which could have very well ended his race. When talking about the penalty of the FIA, Verstappen said, "And how about Norris then? Turn 4? That's fine then? That's silly, man." What is also very interesting to see is that Red Bull have told Verstappen to give the position back to Norris, even though he made a suicidal move in Turn 8, which could have likely ended the race for both him and the Brit. But if this happened, Verstappen would have been in a greater position because of the fact that he's ahead in the championship, as he now saw his lead being cut down by 10 points, and Norris is 47 points behind the Dutchman with 4 races and 2 sprint events to go. The controversial move of Verstappen was analysed by the Sky F1 pundits Croft and Brundle, and David Croft went on to say, "Well, Lando is getting more aggressive this week, but still feeling, how can he fight against Max Verstappen when Verstappen just runs him off the road? That's Norris's feeling right there." To this, Brundle continued, "We need to see that duel again. It looked ridiculous, to be honest, from what I saw. The move of Verstappen was particularly dangerous in Turn 8. Max just slid up the inside and took him off. So there has to be a penalty there for Verstappen, or hand the place back. Now Lando's already got 2 track limits for that double incident with Verstappen, and they count. One more and he'll be getting a warning. For me, that is unquestionably a shove. I'm sorry, Max, but that was outrageous." But according to the 1996 world champion Damon Hill, it was already known that Max Verstappen would start the race the way he did, and by not giving Sainz enough room at Turn 1, effectively pushing him off the track, we've been clearly convinced that there are some rules that desperately need to change. When talking about it to a greater extent, Hill said, "So in Turn 1, Max made no effort to give Carlos any room, and why should he? The rules give you a free pass. C'est la guerre." However, one couldn't help but wonder why the FIA's actions weren't as strict as the actions that Perez took towards Lawson, where the Mexican driver has pushed the man who is now very likely the leading candidate to replace him in Red Bull if a change is bound to happen. We've seen that the attendance here in Mexico is more than 400,000, and all of the fans were there because of Perez, so giving him a penalty would have definitely resulted in a very negative mood from the fans. But is this the primary reason as to why the FIA has decided to be as inconsistent as possible? And how are they dishing out 10-second penalties for a maneuver from Verstappen and are ignoring the one of Perez? One thing is for sure, the FIA is now changing the narrative, and after all of the controversies in the previous race, the governing body is adamant that the racing of Verstappen won't be tolerated anymore. Yes, he might be the genius of interpreting the rules in his favour, but after the McLaren appeal was dismissed before the beginning of the Mexico Grand Prix, the drivers have reportedly come together and complained to the FIA as to how they should race and whether they should implement the tactics of Verstappen. This is what likely prompted the governing body to be more restrictive to the actions of the three-time world champion. And that's why 10-second penalties were given for his actions, even though we're still racing under the same regulations. The FIA has promised that these will change in a month or so, or around Qatar, which should provide more interesting racing to watch and see whether Verstappen would follow the rulebook like he did in Austin. But one thing is for sure, the FIA won't tolerate these plunges and the actions of make it or break it from Verstappen, which were clearly visible in turn 8 of the race. It did cost Norris a lot because he had to spend the majority of his race chasing Leclerc, and while he did pass him, we have no idea whether or not he would have had the pace to get closer to Sainz and challenge him for the win. But this is what the sport is made of. The FIA would have a lot of work to do in the following period, because not penalising Perez for similar actions of Verstappen and giving 2 separate 10-second penalties to the Dutchman is not how the sport should move forward in terms of consistency, even though the penalties of Verstappen were quite deserved. The reaction of Verstappen was quite expected. He didn't agree with both 10-second penalties that were dished out to him by the FIA, calling them silly, and it didn't help that this was a one-stopper race in which he would have had to take care of the tyres for the majority of the race. Norris was unable to get past him before the Dutchman entered the pit lane, but be that as it may, he knew that he was going to finish the race ahead of him if a miracle didn't happen. So, all in all, Verstappen finishing P6 is definitely the most he could have done out of such an outrageous weekend full of competitive racing. Formula 1 is fully back, and had it not been for Leclerc crumbling under pressure, it would have definitely been another 1-2 finish for the Maranello team. But even like this, they've made some solid ground on McLaren and have passed Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship, putting the Austrian team at P3, as they've had the home hero Perez finish last with a damaged car. If Verstappen manages to win the championship, it would be definitely with the 3rd fastest car on the grid, and if Red Bull officially finishes there, it would be the first time since 1983 that a driver has won the championship while his team was 3rd fastest, after Nelson Piquet. Again, Verstappen can be grateful that drivers like Piastri had disastrous qualifying and drivers like Sainz have decided to drive in beast mode, meaning that the 2 protagonists behind him are losing points in the catch-up that will definitely last until Abu Dhabi. Even though Red Bull was satisfied with the upgrade package that they brought in Austin, it's now inevitable that Ferrari is the team to beat, as they're also aiming for the number 1 spot in the Constructors' Championship with the recent downfall of Piastri. However, Verstappen cannot always hope that Piastri won't be there to help Norris, and we've seen that every point counts. So while you'd think that after 2021 the Dutchman won't break under pressure, the moves in turns 4 and 8 against Norris, just as he got passed by Sainz's superior top speed with DRS in turn 1, go to show that even he understands how much every point counts here. With all of this in mind, do you think that Verstappen's penalties in Mexico were deserved? And do you think that we're going to see a bit of a stricter stewarding in the remainder of the season, considering that the championship is all but over? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now.